All right, guys. So my piece has firmed up. It's leather hard. We're ready to assemble this thing. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect the seams right here. Then I'm gonna connect it to the bottom. So for this pot, for our face mug, I'm gonna do a butt joint or a hidden seam. So I'm gonna cut through this and put the ends of the slab together. So what that looks like is this. I'm gonna cut through both of these at the same time, like this. I'm gonna cut right through there. And by doing that, by making this cut, no matter how I wiggle or work my way through it, it will be identical because it's all done in the same movement. Once I make that cut, I wanna open this up a little bit so I can score that. I do wanna be careful in how I bend it. This one right here is a little bit on the stiffer side. So I've gotta be careful when I bend it that I don't break this. It would be nicer if it was a little bit softer. That'd be unbelievable. But I'll let this one go a little bit too long. So I'm scoring that. I'm gonna take a little water on my paintbrush. I don't wanna rub it in. I'm just applying water to the joint. Sometimes if you rub it in, you undo the scoring. So by putting the water on there and letting it drip into the tracks is better. Now I'm taking this and I'm pushing these together. So I'm gonna kind of work this joint together. So it's not like on the last project we did an overlapping seam where the joints came together like this. On this one, we're putting these together here. So one of the things that can work against you here is if your clay is softer and you really squish it too much, then it can you can like thin out the wall, and that's something you want to avoid because then you can see the wall is just thinner and it doesn't look great. Okay, so I'm working this joint together. It looks pretty good. I can't get that together as is, any more together as is. So I've got a little bit of debris on there. It's not perfectly together in some of the spots. So what I'm gonna do to help me mask that and hide that joint is I'm gonna scrape it down. So I'm gonna use my scoring rib right here to scrape that just a little bit. Again, like I said, we don't want to do too much where we thin out the wall, but enough just to kind of level it. And like I said, this one's a little bit on the firmer side. So I'm gonna use a sponge to kind of soften that to help me scrape this. And now I'm using the smooth side of this scraper to just make that seam disappear. And that's what we're looking for there. So you don't really see the seam anymore. It's just all one nice piece. Might have to do a little bit of cleaning up on the inside as well. Not as important, but just kind of making that disappear, okay? So now I'm ready to put the bottom on this thing. So we want to think about how this is gonna work. If I have my face here, we're gonna do a nose, eyes, mouth, ears on this. So if I'm gonna have a handle on here, it's most likely gonna go opposite the face. It's most likely gonna go back here. So if I put the bottom on like this, just how it is, if I'm left-handed and my hand's here on the back of it, when I go to drink from this, it's gonna look like that. So if I change the orientation like this, so now if I drink like this, when I lift this up to drink from it, you can read it as I'm using that. So just a thing to think about, especially when we're using stamps. If I lift that up, now you can read it when somebody's drinking it. So you get a little extra oomph out of your bottom design. So if that's how I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna make some little register marks, boop, right there on the bottom. So I know the orientation that I want it to be. And then I can trace this. And now I can score this and get this attached. So I'm just gonna score inside the line that I just made, the tracing. I don't need to score the whole bottom. Score the bottom of my pot. Put a little water on there. And then find my register marks like this. Make sure it's all lined up. Push this down. Make sure that's good and connected. Sometimes I'll go around the bottom edge with my thumb. Make sure I get that really in there. Okay. All right, so now I got my bottom attached. So now we can clean this up. So with the face mug, not always, you can do anything you want, but a lot of times with the face mug, a flush cut on the bottom looks really nice. So to get a flush cut, if that's what you want, one way to do this is to slide in with your fettling knife. And I like to, when I make this cut, I look at the knife as it rubs against the body, and I'm not watching my cut. So what I'm looking at is that my knife is laying against the body as I slide through here. And if I can do that, then you can get a really nice flush cut here. And that's what that means. So it's flush against the body. I'm right in there. If you try to do it differently, a lot of times people start dropping the handle and starting to carve into it, and it can get away from you. But if you're going for this kind of look, you want to watch how the body lays, the body of the knife, or the blade of the knife, sorry, how the blade of the knife lays against the body of the pot. And if it lays flat, you can get in there and get that real nice and cut looking. Oh, that's nice. All right, as we're starting to kind of finish up some of the general body work here, one last thing to think about is the rim here. When I rolled this slab, the ends weren't level, so I've got this little step right here. That can be fine. That you can like looking at that and then make that part of your design. Totally fine. If you don't want that, we can cut it off. So how do you do that? You could put this in the middle of your banding wheel and then draw a line in there. But a thing to consider, if you draw a level line all the way around this, sometimes you're cutting off a bit of the forehead, and maybe more of the forehead than you want. Maybe you don't want to do that. So sometimes you can start by just starting here at the lowest point and slowly turning and fading that into the rest of the rim. And then you can cut off as little as you want. So that's what I'm going to do here. I just drew that little line that fades back. And now I can cut that. And it's not totally level, but it's cleaned up a little bit. Okay, we've got a couple last things to do to get this body ready for the next step, which would be adding the nose on. I usually start with the nose, but before we do that, we want to kind of give this a good cleanup. So I like to just wipe it down and round out like the rim, get things kind of looking sharp and clean. It's nice to just always bounce back and forth between cleaning and building. Especially getting started, it's tough to build on top of something that's not like ready to go. So if you've got like cut jagged edges around and stuff, it can be hard to then like add on top of that in a way that you're going to be like really successful. So kind of taking a minute to get this thing ready for the next step. So I'm kind of just rounding out this rim so it's not so cut looking. Getting the body in shape. So there's a little point right here. Another spot to check out on here is I did that flush cut, so which gives me a pretty hard 90-degree angle corner right here, which is very chippable. So one thing that can be really nice for a couple reasons is to come around and bevel or miter this edge. So I'm going to come in with the tip of my fettling knife, and I'm going to slide in, and I'm going to try to cut off a a like amount. So I'm not like going deeper or anything. I'm trying to maintain the angle and the depth so it looks relatively similar around this thing. And I'm just cutting that 90-degree corner at maybe a 90 degree in reverse, so it'll give me kind of a 45-degree angle. And so now it takes the sharpness off of there. You can kind of dull that down with your finger a little bit, but it makes it not so fragile, which is a nice little finish. The other thing it does is when you cut that, if it's sitting on your table, let's see if you can see this. It kind of adds a little lift to this. So it gives it like a nice kind of finish, a nice clean finish around the bottom there. The last thing here for this assembly bit is you can see I've got little cracking. Totally happens, especially right here. I'm going to add a big old honking nose on this. So there's not a lot to do. I don't really need to do anything here, but if you get cracks in other places, we never want to smear over the crack. We want to fill the crack. So I like to go in with my fettling knife and just kind of stab that as deep as I can. So I'm just kind of stabbing that, and essentially I'm scoring this joint internally. If I just smeared over it, the crack would still be there. It would just be underneath it, and it would probably open up in the firing. So I'm getting into that crack. I put a little water in there, and now I'm going to roll a really tiny coil that I can just jam in there. And then I can use a tool or whatever to kind of smooth that out. And the crack is now way more stable. So now we went through this whole thing. We got the joint, the hidden seam, we got the bottom attached, we did a flush cut on there, then a bevel cut, we smoothed out the rim, we cut the rim, we smoothed the rim, and then we're tending to any cracks that we got in there. All right, great job, everybody.